What? All I know is life is raggedy.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the Reforming Pessimist podcast. I am Abanga, and today I have someone special with me who is who is going to be talking with me and having a conversation with me about social anxiety. I feel like right now in the generation that we're living in, social anxiety is becoming a very prevalent thing in our lives, and we are beginning to experience them more and more, and find battles with it that can make it harder to navigate in the current, in some cases I would describe very extroverted world that we're living right now. So today I have my bestie JABZ with me. We have long conversations, so I hope that these conversations are not too long and they're short, and I hope that you get to enjoy her intellect, her experience, and her loving kindness to the world. As you listen to the podcast, she has so much experience to share with you all. Actually, she's been battling with social anxiety for a very long time, and I admire her so much in terms of how she's been able to take that on and be able to go into the world and still try and work hard to fit in and be part of it, and not let it push her back or let it push her down. So I want to bring on JABZ, who's literally sat next to me on the couch in the house.
Hey, beautiful people that we can't see.
First of all, JABZ, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell them more about yourself, who you are, your interests, what makes you JABZ, what makes you you, and why you got forced to come on my podcast. As my first guest at that.
So yeah, my name's JABZ. I'm 29. As Abanga was saying, I'm her very, very good friend, and we have been fascinated with mental health and the conversation.
That's right.
For a very, very, very long time. I think
we actually bonded. We bonded on that actually when we first met.
Yeah, that is how our friendship
really started.
Started and developed.
Yeah.
So when Abanga was saying I'm going to do a podcast, obviously I was like, can I be on, please? Because we feel like we've been practicing for this for
forever, yeah. And I think we've been having this type of conversations forever. And it's just like nice to be able to kind of put it on a platform and share it with people as well, and see if they resonate with the kind of experiences that we go through, that we battle when we are in the world and we live in our minds, and we struggle with a lot of trauma that's then turned us into pessimists. And in other time we are working on actually pushing back on those pessimism and reforming ourselves to be more optimistic and see the joys of life. So yeah, I see where you're coming from.
So yeah, we like I said, we've had these conversations for a while now, and we are quite almost looking forward to kind of to talk about them more in the public discourse.
Exactly,
because we can notice now like the shift in terms of the like language of mental health, and now people are more talking about it. We now have like words to articulate how we feel. How we've been feeling for a long time, but now we actually have the vocabulary.
Thank you.
For it. So, and I have noticed recently, like, anxiety, especially social anxiety, has been more in the forefront in terms of the mental health
massively, particularly after the pandemic as well. It's become a big thing, like, and I think that it's always been around, and I think in most cases it's been it was categorized as being introverted, rather than actually being seen specifically for its own. And a lot of the time people just saw it as just shyness. You're just shy.
That is a very
rather than actually really taking a time to look into why somebody struggle to be with a massive group of people. And also, like, in terms of also misconception that's around social anxieties, I think that'll be a really good topic for us to also kind of explore whilst we're talking about social anxiety right now, because I feel like when people have social anxiety, there's this label or this stereotype that goes with them that actually that's not the case. So whilst we're honest, well, what would you say some of the misconception of people who have social anxiety, or how they may be perceived in the general public?
Well, with social anxiety, mostly I would I'll do references to like my own personal experience, because we are very aware it is different for everyone, but you do tend to present, like when you are in public, when you are amongst people, as quite a quiet person or a shy person, a kind of closed off person, because you are feeling too anxious to talk basically, or to interact. So the misconception, as you said before, is that you are just a shy person or you're an introvert, where the two can exist together, introversion and social anxiety, but it's not always that every social anxious person is an introvert. It's not every introverted person has social anxiety.
Yes.
So it's kind of to get your head around that.
It's like, yeah. But I think that also, I see that in the world that we live in as well, when you're very observant, you realize that like our world tend to like the label of black and white. You have to be this or that or. And I've come to feel that like a lot of the world that I live in particular for me, and when you listen to this podcast, you see me talk about this a lot and say like I live in a grey world. And the reason why I say I live in a grey world is because I feel like it's just a spectrum of what type of grey I am in at the moment. It could be a really bright, very light grey, almost white type of grey, or it could be a very dark grey, almost black type of grey, because of depending on where my trauma is affecting me, or my issues are affecting me in terms of how I'm interacting with the world as well. So like when you talk about like, you know, people expect you to either be introvert or extrovert, I would describe myself as like, as I'm getting older, I'm becoming more introverted than extroverted.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, you know, I was putting on an extroverted personality because that's the persona I maybe wanted to put out there, because I felt like that was the only way I could succeed in a society and the world that we're in. But probably that may not be the case for everyone. So when you talk about like the fact that like you can be socially anxious, but you can also be extroverted, I think that people probably would not associate that with them. Be like, you said you're shy, so why are you trying to be extroverted? You said you're shy, why are you trying to dance? Why are you trying to do this, or why are you talkative?
Yeah, it's never just either or. There can always be an intersection, like a crossover. I think especially when for us we're living in like a Western society,
very much,
where it is very much in my opinion a world that is dominated by extroverted people. So when you are presenting as like reserved, quiet, closed off, it can almost come across as maybe you're not you have a disinterest, or you're not interested in the surroundings around you, or maybe that you feel like some people will take it as maybe you think you're too good to interact with the people. That's why you're just closed off, not knowing that internally you're having some next dialogue with yourself and you're going crazy. I would describe it as like sometimes like you're in a group of people, but everything around me is in slow motion, and my thoughts are in overdrive. So sometimes when you're especially at work, if you're presenting like a spreadsheet to me, or some task to me, or explaining something to me, and I'm taking that little bit longer to catch on to quite get what you're saying, and maybe I'm asking you to repeat yourself because I can't remember, because my internal thoughts are there so focused on how I'm going to be perceived in this interaction that I'm not quite processing
the actual interaction with the person.
So I think a misconception is that the person is, she's just a bit slow. You know, I had to tell her this a million times. She's taking a long time to catch on to this, not knowing that. No, like I'm. It's not like I'm stupid or anything. It's just a lot going on in my head. That I can't now add on this kind of these day-to-day tasks on top of it. So yeah, it's been trying to like navigate that. Yeah. But the processes I've developed for that I've realized work for me. Yeah. Is kind of preparing for certain scenarios, but then not preparing so much that you're rigid, and then if something goes on, you'll lose control. So maybe if I know I'm like going into the workplace, obviously the workplace, there's certain like language and there's certain interactions that I'm going to have. I know I'm going to be on the phone. I know I'm going to be emailing people. I know I'll be talking to senior management. So kind of preparing how I would best
present yourself in those scenarios
and communicate in those situations. So kind of I always call it like I'm trying to eliminate all the variables before they happen.
Is that exhausting though? Just so that you can be able to fit into a very normalized extroverted world, or not even a non-socially anxious world, I would say.
Extremely exhausting. It is extremely exhausting.
It's fascinating to me because I'm like, in the workplace, particularly for me, I've been in a workplace as well where I am socially anxious about certain things in my life. Of course, I've got a very, I wouldn't say if it's a hyper social anxiety, like a very small social anxiety where like I'm in the workplace where I'm also constantly aware of like everything that's going on in my surrounding, mostly because of my blackness, and I'm a plus size girl as well. So I'm a plus size girl, and I've been in a world where I've constantly been dunked on or shitted on for just being myself, or there's always presumptions about me, and I pick up on certain signals and certain vibes that people will be throwing at me because of the way I look or who I am and stuff like that. And I tend to see that like every time like I interact with people, immediately I'm open my mouth, their perception or their idea of me automatically started to change, and it really started to like really get into my head where whenever I'm in a social environment, I go on hyperdrive of trying to be overly extroverted. So I try to tap into my extrovertedness where I become overly extroverted to compensate for maybe my physical look or whatever, so that I can be able to fit into whatever dynamic that is out there, and that then plays into my social anxiety as well. Like it's not I'm acting in a shy way, but I'm actually performing in a way where I have to, like you are performing in a way to be able to fit into the extroverted role, perform in a way where like I can fit in, to be able to be liked in most sense, or to be able to navigate whatever place that I'm in, so that like I'm not being pushed back because of certain things about me that I cannot control, or I may not have a handle or a manage over the moment. So for you, like having that kind of challenge on your hand where like you feel like you have to perform, you have to constantly work on yourself to be able to fit in the world, in a society, so you can be able to thrive. How does that impact you even furthermore on your other forms of mental health as well? Because it has to be a challenge, having to constantly check how you behave, plan how you're going to behave, organize how you're going to behave in public, so that people don't pay so much attention to your social anxiety, or they don't misconstrue your social anxiety as to you being stupid or dumb.
That is a very, very good question. Obviously, as we touched on before, it first of all, yeah, it can be very exhausting. Like it takes a lot of your headspace. Mm-hmm. And because now you're always that planning and thinking and worrying, how am I going to come across? You come very self-centered, because now your mind is just thinking about me. So somehow along the line you're becoming quite self-centered. So even that, like you have to check yourself that that's not going to disconnect you also from the people around you.
That's a good point.
Which I don't think we quite. I don't think we talk about too much sometimes if we are there trying to manage conditions that people can't, especially when they can't physically see it, and especially when it's harder to articulate.
Yes.
You do become very much enclosed in your own bubble, and you can end up being quite self-centered. I won't say selfish, but kind of like looking at the world, how everything navigates around you.
Yes.
And sometimes when you're too much in that like circle, you are then missing out on the genuine interactions connections you can build with people, because people will want, even if they don't quite understand you, they will want you if they feel there's some kind of genuine connection and interaction. But if you're so much all the time in your head, you don't get a time to really tap into that.
Yeah.
So it's trying to
balance that. Yeah.
And then obviously now you're focusing on this part of your mental health, and then you're forgetting about all the other stuff you need to do, and
it becomes a lot.
Yeah.
And also, like, I was also going to say, sorry, I was going to cut you off early, but the fact that, like, in most cases, like, even with me, before asking questions as well, coming from a very pessimistic point of view, in terms of, like, people made me feel this way in a negative way, when actually you could also take a step around and actually look on the other side and be like, okay, but what about the ones who actually really received me, embraced me, my whole entirety, without having to judge me or see me in any way whatsoever? Those people do exist as well, but I think most of the time we tend to focus on the negative stuff because they do hurt and impact us a little bit more and stay with us longer than the positive things that come from all the other things, even though we still struggle with whatever mental health struggles that we may have in regards to it. So for you, what has living with basically social anxiety been like? Because you've been living with it for your whole life, basically. You knew you had social anxiety when you were a kid, but you didn't have the language for it at that time, and you've been able to navigate it through your childhood, into your teen years, into your adult, and those are different stages of life where they may have different specific impacts on you in terms of interacting in the world. So how have you been able to navigate all of those stages as well? And if there's like any young people out there as well who are probably like listening, even if it's one of you, and battling, how would you recommend they navigate those things as well? Like, I know we can really teach them anything, but at least from someone's life experience, you can learn, and maybe get some pointers and also feel validated as well. So what would you maybe also share in regards to that?
In terms of navigating, I do think it has become, now we actually have the vocabulary for it and people are talking about it more. It has become a bit more easier to communicate to people, or to kind of explain to people your certain thought processes,
yes,
or patterns, or maybe the boundaries that you need to have in place for yourself. It's been more, it's been a bit easier to communicate your needs a bit more than when I could say maybe 20 years ago or something.
Where it was
or
nothing.
years ago.
20 years ago. Yeah. That, by the way, guys, we need to point out that like we both grew up north, and up north is like, oh my God.
That's another podcast. That's another episode on its own.
Of growing up north in England.
And it's not just about the weather.
It's the more than that. Particularly growing up north as a black person as well.
Yeah.
Because I hear about growing up as a black person in London a lot, or in popular metropolitan areas, but never up north where like you're probably only one black person in a lot of rooms. And as a child, being the only one black person in a lot of rooms and having to navigate that mental gymnastics, in that regard of having to be the person that take on certain conversations that as a child yourself, you have no clue how to navigate those conversations. So yeah, sorry, I cut you off.
No, yeah, that's that's another thing we could delve into. And your environment does play a big part. So maybe a lot of the experience that I had maybe exacerbated by being the like only certain person in this space and whatever, it can easily exasperate all the anxieties that you already have. Yes. So I think for me it was literally, and this like having a whole analysis and reflection of myself, and I think it came round about my teens, like around 16, 17, where I'm like, okay, I see socially there's this issue that's holding me back, but then I have worked out that society is like this, and it's not really going to change. Yes, I am in my world at the time, I thought I'm in the minority. Yeah. So instead of me trying to feel like I can try and get the world to change or to work around me, what processes can I put in place so I can try, when I say fit in, not necessarily fit in, but navigate.
Be able to participate.
Be able to actively participate. Because it will be easier for me to work on myself than to try and change everyone else.
Yeah. But also like at that point that's where you're going into college, which is like another cesspool of like peer pressure. Yeah. You know, where every teen is trying to get everyone to like them. You know what I mean? So it's like and coming from high school, so probably wouldn't have been the big experience. So you're like, okay, how can I change that? How can I improve that? How can I get myself to fit in? Because I remember when I migrated here, I migrated when I was a teen. I was mid-teens. And in high school, I spent all of high school not being able to make friends because of language barrier, because of like, cultural differences, because of just different mental ages, because I felt like having grown up in Ghana, and moving here, I realized the kids that was the same age as her, mentally I was a little bit more mature than them. So therefore we couldn't really align when it came to similarities or thought process and stuff like that. So that was really, really, really hard for me, which then made me more and more socially anxious to be able to go out there and interact with people. So I have this beautiful story of JABZ, and it's funny because as she's going to talk about getting into sixth form as well, we both were struggling with social anxiety in different ways. Yeah. And then she was the one who was able to kind of draw me out of my social anxiety, and she was the first friend that I ever made. Oh, like first friend, and now she's not got rid of me after 12 years.
12.
13 or something.
Timeline. I think it's 14.
It's been a while. It's been a while. But she's not been able to get rid of me. And even in that as well, like, sorry, so going back to your college thing, so when you were talking about, when you are 16, 17, like, I need to change so I can fit into that environment, I had to also do something similar where I had to be like, okay, I need to put myself out there and go and be around all of these black girl groups in the Notre Dame sixth form hall so that I can participate. Maybe someone might pick me.
You sat yourself there hoping that maybe someone might talk to you.
Yeah.
And actually, to be fair, really, that is how it is sometimes.
Yes.
A lot of me trying to participate was not necessarily not saying I woke up one day, then I went to some event and started chatting to loads of people. No, it doesn't happen like that. Sometimes it was literally just me showing up. I literally just turned up, went to some event maybe by myself without my few friends that I did have. Probably went home and had a panic attack. But I stopped being hard on myself. Was like, oh, at least I was there. At least I stepped out of my house. At least that, even if I didn't say anything, I give myself a pat on the back for making this effort.
Can I ask you as well? Sorry, I know that we are going on about your journey, but I think we can talk about your journey as well because I think it's really important. But can I ask you, was there a level of importance to you being part of a community or finding your own group that was driving you to step out of your social anxiety to be like, I need my own people? What was the driver actually? What was the driver to making you to be like, I need to push myself and put myself out there?
Really good question, because yes, so going back to about the self-reflection that I did, the whole analysis, the whole processes, to start to do all of that, you need a driver. You do need something that will drive you, or else you will never push. You will never push yourself to do it. There's only so many times people can advise you and people can kick you up the backside, but it was you yourself who will need to be proactive in that change. You'll need a driver.
What was your driver?
So my driver was to get a community of my own, either like a network of friends or just maybe meeting new network of people outside of the networks and friends that my parents made, because I knew that as much as I felt involved in that community, these are my parents' friends and network. They're not mine personally. So I need something outside of that. But then even that drive to have a community was not because, I just want to be in people. It was because I felt like it was going to lead me to having a better life than I have now. Yeah. Or having a better life than what I would have if I just stay in the social anxiety bubble. Yes. When I realized community it's not just in social in terms of chilling and hanging out. It is in terms of helping you to build your blocks in life and helping you to go through your life stages. Yes. You need the community there. Because I was, as much as I thought maybe I was so capable and so whatever, I knew I was like, there's things I can't do everything alone, and you need people. You do need people. And if you come from a supportive family, they can also help you to some extent, but then you would need other people. So that's what drove me to think, no, I would really need to put myself out there and open myself up to at least try to build these networks. So
back to the college thing of like you trying to build yourself.
So it was like kind of analysis of even if I have this anxiety thing, what are my strengths? And I'll use my strengths to try and push myself into social settings.
Ooh, that's a good way of doing it.
And then what are my weaknesses? And these weaknesses, you're not going to put them down. Don't list these weaknesses and then just wallow and bash yourself. Think also how you're working on the weaknesses. So I'm not great I'm not great at verbal communication talking, but I can write. I'm good at typing and constructing.
And let me tell you, she is, because she carried me through my degree, my master's, application to get into uni. So when I tell you she really is. But yeah, I had to just put that in there.
I was like, okay, the verbal communication is not that great, but I can spot patterns and I can kind of maybe copy or emulate things that like basically kind of like like copy people, but not in like a,
mimicking their behavior and then be able to like perform it.
And be able to perform it. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. So I'll just study the people, how they interact. I was good at studying and analysis and what. So I was like, okay, I'll just study them, how they interact, copy the small talk, and that's a start. And see where we go from there.
Yeah. So one is putting yourself out there. Two is like whilst you put yourself out there, the more and more you do it, you get comfortable just being out there. Then you start to mimic how people interact and participate in society and socialize. Yeah. So you can then be able to kind of use those tools and like, you know, those mechanisms to also be able to try and see if you can communicate with people and those until you find your own style.
So just through observing the people who I had around me, who were mostly extroverted people, observing how my parents would interact. They're very extroverted people, and maybe like stuff like watching TV and stuff like that. So I would learn like the social etiquette. Yeah. Or like almost like I'm revising for an
exam.
And that was my strong point, revising as well. Yeah. So I was like try to revise the social etiquette cues and then regurgitate them when the time is there when I need to use them. Yeah. So something simple like before when people used to be like, oh hi, how was your weekend? I used to just go, oh, it's fine. Oh, it's fine. And me in my old way of thinking, I would be like, oh, I'm nice. Why are these people not talking to me? But then I realized, oh, I'm giving them quite closed answers. Yeah,
very closed answers.
And I'm not even giving a follow-up question of, oh, how was your weekend? So no wonder these interactions were going nowhere. Yeah. And then when I learned that, because some of these things, my peers already knew this from when they were kids. I had to actually study and learn, this is a better way to interact with people. That's when those interactions became a bit longer. Yeah. That's when people notice you as a familiar face, even though maybe you can't say we've built a friendship yet, but they know you as a familiar face. So that's like getting your foot in the door, basically. This is the very
basic beginning. Yeah. So putting that on the side, we'll come back to the journey as well again. You pointed out in terms of like how these social skills, for instance, like some kids knowing when to interact with someone, when somebody asks you how are you, they ask back, I'm good. And then, they ask back, how are you? And then they're able to interact with the person. Where do you think that like leads some young people, in your opinion as well, some children and in terms also adults now to be stunted in that style of socializing, where instead of it becoming an easy way to be able to communicate socially, it's like more of an anxious way of communicating now? Where do you think that caused that division, where one person can maybe move one way and the other person can move the other way in terms of social interaction?
I think a lot of it does stem from, majority of it stems from your home environment.
Yes, and trauma.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, so what happens in the home environment and how you as a person, how you dealt with it. Because people deal with, it can be the same scenario. That's why you see with siblings, they can be in the same home environment, but they've all had different ways to cope with it, and it must manifest in completely different ways. Yes. So for me, what came and manifested as social anxiety for somebody who was in my exact situation could have been, I don't know, like
performative. Performance. Who knows? Who knows? Someone else.
Or maybe like highly extroverted.
It's highly extroverted.
Wanting to dominate
everything, or just wanting to escape everywhere, so that they can like just not be in their actual environment, just being. And I know people like that too, who actually, in terms of like dealing with their like home environment or wherever catastrophes is experiencing those of home environment, they choose to be out in the public more, because I think in terms of they feel safe, then be closing themselves off or like shutting themselves down. So I get what you in terms of like I agree with that point of like how you deal with things that kind of then start to become a rolling ball to what ends up becoming who you are.
Even when you see these kind of characteristics and behaviors in adults, I feel it's still coming from their home childhood environment. They've just not really had a time to
sit down,
develop from that. And all these analysis, reflection, all these that maybe a lot of us now, which I can't blame them, because now we're having the conversation.
We have the language now.
Adults where this conversation was not a thing, then there was no chance for you to try and create new habits, positive and healthy habits for yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that's been quite interesting also to look at.
Very interesting. And also, it also like depends on who you meet, how you associate, what environments that you were in, even as you're growing older. So not just the environments you're in as a kid, but an environment you're in as you're growing older as well. That can give you the opportunity to be able to be like, okay, do I have the space to like practice introspection, looking within myself, trying to heal, maybe seeking help to kind of feel and fix this situation I'm in, like trying to approach things from more of an optimistic place where I'm like, let me actually work on myself and maybe actually manage this anxiety that I have, rather than just letting this anxiety become who I am and my whole identity, but like also like how I can let it be something that is part of me that I'm working with through my life, but it's not my entire self in that regard. And I'm looking forward to us getting to the point where we talk about how you can be more than your socially anxious self, but that will be the end. So after sixth form, of course, now you're navigating into your early 20s. How is that like for you?
I've learned
approaching the professional world as well.
Yeah, so I learned the basics. I've expanded somehow my social network, but it's still very much I'm learning by rote. You know, like where you revise for exam, but then after you finish the exam, now all the knowledge is gone.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. So sometimes I can't say like I've learned very useful tools, but that's just got my step in the door. And the only thing with that method, if you do that for a very extended long time, it's almost like then you're not being yourself, almost like you're just always performing. Acting, and you're always, and then people some people might interpret that as you're being fake. So how would I be able to talk naturally and the conversations be able to come more naturally, and the connections to be more, just let it flow kind of. What I realized, in my experience, when I put myself out there and was meeting more people and get involved in more things, you have more things to talk about because you have more experiences. Yeah. And because now I'm talking about things that I have lived through or I've done or places I've been, I'm not having to think too much about what I'm saying. So it's like, how I describe it as you're going to that job interview for a job where
about everything.
You look at the job description like, I've done this.
So this time you're not revising to practice, you're just being yourself this time.
So now you're going to the interviews like, I actually don't really need to even really revise for the interview because I know whatever question you're going to throw at me, I've done this before and I can talk about it, I can talk about it. Without even thinking.
Did that come with also because you did the basics of actually trying to really put yourself out there to get to know people, which means that when people finally became friendly with you, you could finally open yourself up, which meant that it wasn't so hard to open yourself because this time you're being yourself and you're not performing to actually get to know people. You're just being yourself to get to know people this second round. Okay.
Yeah. And so now early 20s, moving to a different city, going more on trips abroad, taking some trips by myself and trying to navigate that.
That's one thing I admire about you, girl, because I know a lot of people who travel by themselves. Literally, I don't like to travel by myself. I'm trying to learn to, but I don't like traveling by myself. I feel like it's so scary.
So now by the time I do meet a new person, even if we have on the surface nothing in common, maybe they'll start saying, oh, well, I went to this country once and I visited and I'll be like, oh, well, I went there too. And now I'm not really thinking too much about what I'm saying. I'm not hyper-focused on if I'm saying the wrong or right thing because now I'm just talking from experience and it's just flowing.
Also, like, just to jot that down as well, if you're listening and you're trying to also put things into the things to do as well, is that the fact that you're socially anxious means that you shouldn't also not have experiences. Put yourself out there and do experience. And if it's just you're doing it by yourself, but in your own comfort zone as well, where it works for you. So that, like, in that case, when you do find the confidence to be like, I'm willing to put myself out there now and actually build a community, you do have something to talk about yourself rather than just not having anything, building some other forms of life experience where it doesn't have to be surrounded by people. Because in my head, I always thought that, like, to build life experience, I had to deal with people. But you and one of my other really good friends as well, who I'm looking forward to bring her on as well to also talk about this similar topic, has taught me about how, like, you can build life experience alone without having to be out there with just people. And that could also be beautiful in that.
Yeah, and it takes, like, that kind of it'll take a certain level of inner confidence for you to realize, your experiences are not necessarily linked to people.
Yes.
Or more like if you have the experience, you're more likely to be exposed to more people than the other way around. If you need, then getting people to come with you to have the experience.
Yeah.
So, and then also just doing whatever, because obviously whatever I'm saying now is what worked for me,
For
but then
you,
also finding what is most comfortable for you as well. So now, I've developed a bit more. Also a good thing to remember, that basic initial effort that I made, it was intentional.
Yeah.
But it had to be in a way where I am detached from the outcome. Because if I was there like, okay, I've learned small talk, I've practiced it, I've revised it, and I practiced this small talk and this person, and they didn't respond well, and they didn't become my friend, and if you get too caught up on how the other person responds to you, you're not going to move forward. So I just did it. Okay, I put effort. It is what it is. Maybe the person wasn't feeling me, they didn't like the look of me, whatever. I will not then internalize that too much, which is kind of hard when you're already...
I was about to say that, because dealing with disappointment is really hard.
You're already quite an introspective person. But it was good, not all the rejections that I also kind of skipped over all the rejections you are going to face when you do put yourself out there for the first time. And there was a lot of rejection. But what helped me is that I didn't internalize it too much. So I think I used that example before. I go to an event and... I think I'm gonna have a good night conversation with somebody. Maybe we just watched a public speaker, and we're now talking about the speech after. And I've now just gone and said something completely random, because now sometimes, well, in my personal case with my anxiety, sometimes the thoughts are not always coming out coherently. So where maybe they're talking about the speech topic, and I just randomly said, oh well, I didn't like, I don't know, the way this person parked the car. And then now the person's looking at me strangely, like, why is she? What is she on about? This girl's weird. And now you can see in their eyes, they've switched off the conversation. They've turned around. They don't want to talk to you. But then it was me learning not to
take that on so hardly,
beat myself up too much. And still be like, okay, yes, I just said something completely weird. But I did talk to somebody new today. I was trying to draw out the positives.
Girl, you are really an optimist in this. You are really reforming your optimism in this social anxiety, because if it was me, I would have been like, oh my God, I cannot believe that they did that to me. I would have been wallowing in my self-pity for a very long time about that.
There was a time when it was the first seminar for me starting a uni course. So I'm like, okay, I'll go try and talk to these new people. I'll try and talk to them from day one, because it's easier to kind of build those friendship bonds in the beginning than trying to catch up. Even in a few weeks later, you'll struggle. So I was like, oh, what do I talk about? So I said, okay, I'll ask if we had any homework. So I asked somebody, oh, did we have any homework? And the girl just gave me like the dirtiest look ever and was like, no, we didn't have any homework. It's the first seminar. And in my head, I'm there like, oh my days, why wouldn't we have homework? This is the very, very first seminar.
But I think in your defense, you were trying to be like, let me try and make conversation.
For me, I was really trying
make conversation. But for the girl, she's like, girl, like, what are you on about? Like, who doesn't work at uni?
And even like the people next to them were just rolling their eyes and be like, oh, who's this girl?
Oh my God. How did you feel like in that moment?
At that moment, I just felt like I wanted the ground to swallow me. And then the weirdest thing is then we did get into the seminar, and then the tutor was like, oh, so there was a little homework, pre-homework that you guys could have done. And then but obviously it's the first seminar, so there's no stress that you didn't do it. It's okay. And then I was like, oh, so I wasn't that crazy after all.
Well, how was that girl's face looking like now? How was her face looking like?
I think they glanced at me a little bit and it was like...
And that's a cautionary tale, people. Don't be mean. Like, just don't be mean. Like, you could have been like, girl, there's no homework. Oh, by the way, I'm this. Just for people out there, like, I really, truly believe that we need to be, I know that it's not demanded or required, but be friendly when we meet everyone, because we just don't know where people are at when they are making an effort to reach out to you. So yeah, that was a really good story.
So now, okay, early 20s, I've got a bit more of my confidence, but now I have to go into the workplace, and the workplace is a completely different environment. To this day, I don't see the workplace as the normal world. It's different.
It's a very interesting world.
Different way of communicating, interacting with people, a completely different way. So it's also having to learn that.
Yeah.
Where now it's a bit more pressurized, because now you guys are a team who are working towards a shared set of goals and objectives. So you're not just there to be... And yes, you can be friends, but you're not just there for a social thing. You're there to aim to hit these goals and objectives as a team.
Yeah.
So you're with people who are expecting you to kind of be on their level socially. Because they've never seen anything else.
Yes.
And so I'm trying to play catch up with my social anxiety, but then I'm also making sure I don't hinder this team from working towards their goals and objectives.
Which then causes more anxiety for you.
Which then causes more anxiety. So it's like the pressure of it has made it way more challenging for me.
Yeah.
Even to this day, I still find the workplace the most baffling and challenging place.
And I wonder how many... I think that also when the pandemic happened, and because of the kind of algorithm world that I interact on social media, I realized how much people who with social anxiety and introverts, how much they loved the pandemic, because for the first time they were like, finally we have power in this workplace, and we can be a little bit more liberated and keep to ourselves and do what we want to do in the workplace without having to go into a corporate environment or a work environment where we have to be very performative to fit into this kind of narrative or this kind of standard that's already been set, that has no wiggle room for any other personality or any other individual other than this type of individual that fits into that kind of box, depending on whatever workplace environment that you were in, that has whatever structure that is in place. So yeah, I truly understand where you're coming from in that as well.
That was very challenging at the time, and still, out of all the challenges I faced, still one of the most challenging things I have today.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Maybe it's like my Achilles heel. Maybe just that one part where I would still very much, like, obviously I've made progress, but still find it very difficult.
Do you want to expand on why it's so difficult? Because you were able to kind of battle it in your teens and in your early 20s and even in higher education, but for some reason in with the workplace it's a little bit more harder. Is because maybe like in your teens and in your early 20s, you're with more of your peers, whilst in the workplace, you're with different age range and different age groups. Could that be one of the reasons? Or is it because, like, cultural differences as well? We come from a very, African, we're African diaspora, African, cultural background where we have certain ways of behaving and being around people as well that may sometimes not translate so well into the workplace culture, particularly the up north workplace culture. Like, we need to really specify that, because British culture is so different. The southern British culture is different to the Midlands British culture, to the northern British culture. They have their own peculiarities that sometimes you need to be able to work on participating in it, so you'll be able to assimilate and fit into it. And I think that when I speak about this as well, like, a lot of immigrants, immigrant people of color, this is something that, like, as a child, you learn very quickly to be able to be on in terms of assimilating, so that particularly if you want to move forward and build a life for yourself in this country, something that you really, really need to do so you can fit into the culture and be able to pass. So could those be one of those reasons as well? I'm just trying to understand, like, because there could be other people also our age as well who may also be struggling, so they have no clue why they are struggling.
So it's basically all of the above. So all those reasons, all of it. But yeah, you hit on some very, very important points. So what I was referring to before, saying about it's the pressure of it, because you have to hit set goals and objectives by a certain time.
Yeah. So
with college, with uni or what, okay, you're there to study, and yes, you're trying to make friends, but I'm the only person who's putting pressure on myself to make friends. I could not really make friends in this place and still study and pass and what, but in work, like, that you have to
it's not so relaxed.
It's not relaxed. You have to
there's
have
a target,
that verbal communication, that them strong interpersonal skills to be able to do well in your job.
Yes.
Even no matter what field you're in and no matter what level you're at, it's like it's very important to the outcome. So then it's having that pressure, like, oh, I know I need to catch up, but now it's having someone putting a timer on me.
Yes.
You need to catch up in this amount
and you don't
of
have
time.
that time to do it.
Yeah.
The way that you would have done it if, because you have your own process in place that you're using to cope with this anxiety.
And now you're thrust into an environment where it's not as exposed as the other environments you're in.
Yeah.
Maybe for high school or college, you're all from the same area up north, or you're all from the same. Maybe you gravitate to people from the same countries, you're the same cultures, but now you're in the workplace where it's a mixture of different people. It's a quite a juxtaposition, because it's a mixture of different people, but then they've not been exposed to many different people
as well.
So how could I then begin to explain, oh, I'm not quiet because I don't want to be here, I'm not snobby, or it's not because I'm not interested, it's just I'm socially anxious. When the person you're talking to has probably never even talked to a black person this much in their life, probably never heard of the country that you're from. Can't understand why you miss out all the T's when you're talking. Where's the T? So these things, it's already all these things they don't understand, and then try to explain to them, I have this thing called social anxiety. And then we're linking back to when people just think, oh, so you're just a bit nervous, you're a bit shy, you just need to come out of your shell a bit. And I'm like, oh no, it's a bit more than that.
It's a bit more than that.
And then also, because we all here for, you can have friends in the workplace, but they're here for a reason.
Yes.
So to be fair to your colleagues, they do not owe you. They're not obligated
to be understanding of you. But I disagree with that. And the reason why I disagree with this is because it's a workplace environment. And at the end of the day, for the employer, you want all your employees to be at their best, to be able to perform and keep the organization going. And that means you also have to be able to find ways to facilitate all these different individuals in your workplace. I know we do say when it comes to things like, when they look at people with different disabilities and stuff like that, where workplaces are trying to accommodate. But I think when it comes to mental health, a lot of companies and organizations are yet to catch up when it comes to these things and actually understand the importance of understanding a lot of their employees, mental stages and where they're at and what they're battling and struggling with, to be able to get them to perform the best in the workplace. I don't think, but if you're working for a smaller organization as well, I think there may be some bigger organization, not all, some bigger organization that may be putting those things forward, but not all of them are doing it.
That is a very touched on a good point about the scale, the size of the organization. I've always worked in smaller organizations, so they just sometimes they just don't have the time for it, or the facilities for it. I might disagree. We might agree to disagree. I still do not think they're necessarily obligated to try and understand where you're coming from.
I think
as much as you can say, oh well, we need to understand our employees, because obviously if they're at their best, we can get the best outcomes. Because there's so many people in the world who want to work. They're not going to spend too much time trying to get you up to a standard when they're like, I already have 10 people looking for your same job. You're already coming with the tools. That's why in all of the job descriptions, they're always looking for someone who can think on their feet, hit the ball rolling. Who can fit in with the team. Those are always the buzzwords that they don't, the work environment itself doesn't really allow for time to
be able to
learn.
So for my final question to you, for someone like that, in knowing that reality as well, how does it feel for you, someone who lives with the social anxiety, who's constantly working to improve them every day and get them better every day, knowing this reality, how does it help your outlook to the world and to the society that you participate in as well?
I think it's helped me to be more aware of myself, and but at the same time, it's more aware of myself, the shortcomings, and the work I need to do, but then also not being too hard on myself, that I can't do certain things or do them as quick, or maybe some things I might not be able to ever do to a certain level, and be okay with that.
Yes.
And to know that everybody is different, and everyone contributes something different to the table that is just as valuable. So maybe I'm not a quick think on my feet person, because now my thought processing anxiety, it takes me a bit longer to learn things and catch things and whatever. But I am quite adaptable, or when I do learn something, I never forget it.
Yes.
You know, it becomes like a strength of mine. Like, you know, I'll just focus on more what I'm bringing than the shortcomings.
Yes.
So me, when I was not confident, like always very insecure about, well, insecurity is always there, but when I was highly insecure about it, I was focusing too much on what people were telling me I can't do and what I was bad at.
Yes.
Because yes, there's things I'm bad at, but you've not talked about all the stuff I can't do.
You're good at, yes.
So now I'm more bounced back. Okay, I'm bad at this, but okay, I can do this really well.
Yeah.
And it coming to maybe having the confidence to come to the employers, well, if I am so bad at this, you can replace me. Which obviously in this economy, it just sounds so...
But at the end of the day,
small things you're focusing on that I'm bad at, that is so impactful to your company, then replace me. Most of the time, maybe they just want to hyper focus on the things you can't do instead of all the other things that you can do in the job.
You can do, yes.
Just these little things that you might struggle to catch up with.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it relates to organization size, dynamics, the organization culture itself.
So how is your social anxiety now with you? Like, how is it like for you now at this current stage as a 29-year-old living with your social anxiety now? How is it like living with it now, having gone through all that you've done?
It's interesting because now, like, the conversation on mental health has changed so much, and we're not even that old.
Yeah.
In the past, I can't emphasize enough how much it has changed since the past 10 years. So like for us to even this to be a topic on a podcast is crazy. It would have never have been.
Yeah.
Mental health would have never been a topic. Well, might have been a topic, but then we would never talk about anxiety. I don't think they consider anxiety to be serious
or
enough.
not even just anxiety, but like this specific type of anxiety, because
I think it was always like, oh yeah, okay, we know it's there, but it can't be that deep. And then now people saying, no, it is that deep. This is what I think. Also, going the pandemic, and then people who maybe didn't previously struggle with anxiety, or maybe didn't realize they had it, or social stuff, now having those experiences and issues, and then realizing, oh, okay, this is what they've been talking about this whole while. Yeah. It is a thing, you know.
And so now, because there's more people vocalizing, speaking about it, you feel a little bit more embraced, and I would say.
More people in the public sphere, more like big, like famous people, say, who are talking about it. Yeah. So it helps then us, like, to validate and normalize, like, oh, okay, so we're not crazy.
We're not crazy, you know what I mean? I will say though, I really like this social anxiety conversation because I can see how you came from it at each stage of your life in terms of managing your social anxiety from a very optimistic point of view rather than a pessimistic point of view. Because for me, who's reforming from my pessimism, if I was in your shoes, I would have literally been seeing it from a pessimistic point of view, where I start to victimize myself and think that, like, you know, I'm stunted and like therefore like this is now going to be a hindrance in my life and this is going to make me struggle to be able to participate in the world and stuff like that. And that's kind of my worrying as well. So it's good to see someone who's like, you know, trying to be an optimist in their outlook of what this situation that they have, that they're living with, that they're navigating and managing as well, and being able to present to the world.
But just also to remind you guys that optimism didn't, obviously we're talking about it and we're condensing everything into a short amount of time, but the optimism did not come overnight.
Yes, and that could be another episode.
And I always see it as an exercise. You have to constantly work on it.
So
it's like the way you will always you have to like go to the gym often and work on it, or if maybe you've had a bad injury from a sporting accident or whatever, and you've gone through the initial physio and recovery, but there's certain stretches and things you always have to do to maintain it. That's how we need to approach it. So as much as I can say this now today, you know, in high spirits, there are phases where I'll go through challenges, and then maybe the social anxieties are becoming heightened. But then also knowing that, okay, now I have the tools in place to combat that.
Yes.
And obviously in terms of obviously the mental health kind of terms of mental health needs, what I'm saying is a bit more lower in terms of support and needs. But for these the lower needs,
if you're going to have tools beginner tools in terms of like how to start,
to educate ourselves and to make sure we have our own tools.
Exactly. But also, as JABZ is talking about this, I would like to also point out that, like, whilst you're listening to this, also bear in mind that you're listening to it from just two individuals who have life experiences, who are trying to share and validate. And we are not professional help. We are not psychotherapists. We're not therapists. We're just here to kind of tell our stories and get people to feel validated and see themselves for whatever situation that they're living with. So please, as well, if it's on an extreme, do reach out for help. Go on the NHS website and go on their mental health portal and try and sign up for counselling. We know the NHS is not the best at the moment. It can take a long time in the queue and wait in, but please do that so you can get the best support that you need and for yourself. I will also try to encourage you to advocate for yourself in terms of the fact that, like, the fact that you're living with this doesn't mean that, like, you know, it has to be the end all and be all for you, and whatever dream and reality that you have for your life, that's not going to be possible to manifest. It could come through. It's just sometimes coming from a working class background, an immigrant background, very limited resource background, I realized that I had to educate myself, go and do research, go and constantly keep searching so I can find the things and the tools that I need for myself to be able to hopefully launch into the life and the world that I want to live in. So that's also another encouragement I also want to give to you. My final question, do you have any advice you want to give to the audience from yourself, or any last words before we close up?
Don't ever let somebody, this is particularly maybe with anxiety and coming out of yourself, and like I said, it does take a certain level of confidence to kind of have that bounce back with people, but don't let everyone ever let somebody shame you for trying.
Yes.
When I stopped letting people just like make fun of me, why would you say that, why would you do that, why are you so awkward, and just be like, yo, this is how I am. You know, if if it bothers you so much, you could just not interact with me, but don't make me feel bad for something I can't do, because there's things I can do that other people can't do, which I would never shame them for. So this thing that you expect me to do because we're all adults and all adults can talk, who can't talk? No, not everybody. Everybody's different.
And actually, whilst we have that as well, I'm glad that you said those last words, because I know JABZ really well, so I understand her story as well. And I think another thing that I want to also bring you back on to talk about is bullying and words that have been left with you because you didn't do things a certain way or in a normalized way that can also live with you for a while and can also inform the way that you think and the way that you move and navigate yourself.
I think we've touched upon that a bit throughout,
because when you're socially anxious as well, you get bullied a lot, and I think that's something that we didn't even bring up in the conversation.
You do internalize it, but that is another episode.
But I just want to thank JABZ for coming on. I love her so much. Like, guys, she literally was the one who put me on my social anxiety. She was my first friend, and then she then reported me onto some of my amazing friends that I have right now, even one of my other best friends as well. Like, she's one of the most coolest people ever. When you listen to the intro song and the outro song, it's my girl here doing the support and assist, trying to make sure that, like, I'm making this passion projects come to reality. So I really hope that you all enjoyed our conversation. And JABZ have a charity that she runs called Same Ground. Please go check it out on Instagram. If you want to donate, they have like I think a link on your page.
Yeah, the Instagram page. Yeah, a
GoFundMe link. Just go and donate if you have a local piece here. And I know things are tight, but she basically does the thing. She went and did a project in Tanzania, and she met these little cuties, and she wants to send shoes to these kids. So she gets shoes together and she sends shoes to the kids so that they can have clean, sparkly shoes to come and walk the feet of the earth and look cute. So please support if you want to. And other than that, thank you so much for coming to listen to me and my bestie. We really enjoyed recording this podcast, and I really hope you guys enjoy it too. And you're not letting your pessimism drag you through this raggedy life. I hope you all have a good rest of your day. Bye. Bye. Raggedy.
raggedy. So raggedy.